Breath of the Wild ditched the green for the blue and made it finally possible to green screen Link in later stages of the Zelda game. Joking aside, this moment in 2014 did change everything we knew about Link, with the longest hairdo yet of the spirit of the hero and a list of armor and apparel sets that was close to equal to the variety of enemies found in the game. 14 against 18. And then we're counting sets. If we're talking about individual pieces of armor, the number is close to double that of enemy types found in the game, even without DLC and amiibo. So with a variety as big as this, how can the Zelda team expand their clothing or with Zelda fashion experience? Let's find out inside Zelda Breath of the Wild 2. But before we do so, be sure to leave a like and subscribe, as over 80% of you watching are apparently not subscribed. And you know what? That and liking this video is the by far best support that you can offer us as creators. Well, that and also pressing that shiny notification bell and again for all notifications to not be tricked by the YouTube algorithm and be notified when we upload new Zelda Breath of the Wild 2 videos. Hello everyone and welcome back to Inside Zelda Breath of the Wild 2, where we go over every element that we can expect to see changed, expanded or added in the sequel to The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. Today we're doing armor, the biggest change applied to Zelda, since yes, in past games we had all the tunics but in limited quantities that couldn't be adjusted. In the later half of the games you had a selection of three: green, blue and red. Yes, the primary colors of Zelda besides gold. The color of divinity and royalty, but you already knew that. And yes, you will find these colors a lot in Breath of the Wild, but thanks to the tradition of dyeing apparel in Hateno Village, we were not bound specifically to a set color of armor if we desired to spice it up. Well, at least in most cases, as some pieces of clothing like the champion tunic could not be altered as it ties to pre-rendered cutscenes and the true ending of the game. And that is good, since I have the pleasure to own this tunic in real life. Wrong shade of blue, but I'm working on fixing that as soon as the situation is over. Anyway, all of the sets in Breath of the Wild could be upgraded with special set bonuses added by the Great Fairies, and their increasing adoration for Link. I wonder what Zelda will think about that. Joking aside, most of the sets in Breath of the Wild had cultural ties. The Kingdom of Hyrule was in the base $60 experience represented by the Hylian set and the Soldier set, though you could argue that the well-worn outfit and the climbing set are also of Hylian origin, though the second one might also have something to do with the ancient Sheikah. The champion tunic was obviously custom made for Link's slim but athletic Hylian body type as part of the exclusive champion collection made by Princess Zelda herself. And DLC Pack 2 also added the Royal Guard set. The other sets were scattered around the domains of the other races: Sheikah, Zora, Goron, Rito and Gerudo. All of them had their special features like stealth up, swimming faster and up waterfalls, though sadly not underwater, fire resistance, cold resistance, and most glorious of all, cross-dressing abilities to, just like Cloud Strife in Final Fantasy VII and the remake, disguise yourself as a female to enter areas where only members of the beautiful gender are allowed. Though there were other tunics that were harder to obtain, specifically the Barbarian and the Hero of the Wild sets, and both of these are likely to play way bigger roles in Breath of the Wild sequel, since Hyrule this time around doesn't need a champion but a hero. A title that we didn't receive from Zelda until we had beaten Calamity Ganon and served Dark Beast Ganon on a Malice plate to her. In other words, nothing else but what we see in the true ending cutscene with Zelda is indeed canon when it comes to armor. What do we find there? The champion tunic, which is also found in the first look trailer of Breath of the Wild sequel. Though things have changed, and this entire trailer was about highlighting the changes from Breath of the Wild. New wildlife, Ganondorf, the hand holding him in place, the underground areas, Zelda's shorter hairdo, and finally clothing now having multiple layers and being possible to customize to a greater degree, using pieces of the Hylian tunic over the champion tunic for underground exploration, a feature that simply didn't exist in Breath of the Wild, as there you could combine different caps, tunics, armor and pants, even dye these in Hateno Village and upgrade them by visiting the Great Fairies, but not place one tunic or armor on top of another, or say dress with multiple layers. This is bigger than we think, as it might impact stats, as we will see more points added to Link's overall armor that is likely to surpass what was achievable in Breath of the Wild. Well, at least when it comes to one of the 3 parts which we could dress or undress Link. Though on a more serious note, it is likely that we will start with this basic Hylian champion set fusion and probably have to recollect all the other armor pieces, tunics and accessories, with or without Zelda by our side. Since the champion's tunic is the official tunic of Link found on all merchandise, official concept art used in the promotion of Breath of the Wild and its sequel, and the same goes for Princess Zelda. The champion blue is likely sported by both of the lovebirds in the beginning of Breath of the Wild sequel. Since, remember, neither the Barbarian set nor the Set of the Wild was required to get the true ending, they were optional shrine-related quests. In other words, it is likely that the 2 sets will return to represent the Zonai Barbarian and the spirit of the hero, but do not expect to have these 2 until sometime after we get out of the Caves of Horrors. On that note, with some likely new and returning mechanics and armor covered, it's time to turn our attention to the title of the video, namely expanding and adding to the armor types and armor we already have. Just a little clarification, we'll go over potential new tunics first, and as we address these, also go over the Barbarian set and the Set of the Wild. With the green hand being highlighted so prominently, we can't do anything else but start by talking about potential new Zonai armor beside the Barbarian set which buffed up Link's offensive strength. Here, the void is big, as we know little about the Zonai except for the fondness of the color green and dragons, which couldn't be found on the Lionel and Malice Dark Sorcery inspired Barbarian set, but plenty in their architecture. Hence, we would love to see some green dragon designed tunics with possible lightning capabilities now that Urbosa's fury might be gone. First thing that comes to mind is Volvagia's human form from Hyrule Warriors, only with a green dragon head instead of the red, and instead of fire powers, lightning powers. When we think about it, dragon armor would be awesome. Perhaps it could be crafted by modifying other existing tunics with parts of the scales and horns of the dragons. It is just an idea. As for other armor, it is impossible to tell. Probably some more savage-infused tunics that we possibly can't imagine as the Zonai were just teased to us in Breath of the Wild, but no doubt they will get 1 or 2 new sets beside the magnificent but also easy mode turning Barbarian sets. Next we have the Sheikah, who need more sets in the sequel. And yes, I'm also talking about the Kakariko Sheikah, but more about the Yiga clan, as there was no way for us to get any Yiga sets in Breath of the Wild. With the former Yiga Dorian on our side, that might change in the sequel. We would love to see him make a special set for Link. That, or claiming it from a Yiga mini-boss or something later in the game. There should at least be some plot or specific moment tied to the Yiga when the clothing is granted to us. Perhaps there could be more Dorians within the Yiga clan who wants to aid our quest to bring down the lethally dangerous resurrected Ganondorf. Speaking of Ganondorf, Malice armor. We talked about Malice weapons in our weapons episode, but how about armor? Say a set that has immense capabilities, which we can only use for a very limited time due to its corrupting and downright destructive nature to Link. Pretty much the armor equivalent of the one-hit obliterator from the Champion's Ballad. Immensely strong, but coming at an absolutely terrible price. Perfectly fitting to the nature of Malice. Naturally, these are just some examples that we brought up, and in the end, we will never know exactly what type of new armor and weapons we can expect. But at the same time, it can help if we were able to think like if we were set on the task to turn a simple expansion with a few new weapons and armor to a full-blown sequel, with probably the double, or at least 25 to 40% of it. One that is set in the same world but at the same time different. There are a few ways to approach this. Number 1, continue the story but add something more to it, and to a much greater degree than what was the case in the original game. The other is to reinvent the game, which is definitely rewarding but more time consuming as you need to start much from scratch. The Zelda team wants to avoid delaying this game to the end of this or the beginning of next generation. That explains also why we to this point haven't had a Zelda game set in the same Hyrule or with the same Link and Zelda. Breath of the Wild's Hyrule is however too ambitious to just be thrown away. Then what can they do besides adding some new content like new armor across all races and factions found in the game, and say sets that let us climb during rain and swim underwater? Give new meaning to already existing elements. We have already detailed the Barbarian set, but nothing has the same plot or lore potential as the set of the Hero of the Wild. the by far hardest set to obtain throughout Breath of the Wild, as it required locating and clearing all 120 shrines to then be summoned to the Forgotten Temple and receive the set of this incarnation of the spirit of the hero. This tunic had little to no purpose in the game except the feeling of finally wearing the hero's tunic, that is to say green, and not cosplaying a past hero through amiibo. I will admit, visually it isn't as appealing to look at compared to the amiibo sets of past heroes, but you should never judge a book based on its cover, since the Tunic of the Wild, just like the Master Sword and the Triforce, was deliberately downplayed and not given the proper respect in Breath of the Wild. It was there as a reward for hundreds of hours of hard and creative in-game work. Now, however, it is its time to shine and to replace the champion tunic. Since what is the Breath of the Wild saga all about? Bringing down Ganondorf for his crimes against Hyrule 100 years ago, and nothing is more crucial in this regard than the set of the Wild. The tunic that Ganondorf fears almost as much as the Master Sword. In fact, the simplest story potential of the sequel lies in 3 objects downplayed throughout Breath of the Wild. The Master Sword, which didn't work as we expected, the Tunic of the Wild, which we have barely used, and the Triforce, which we only have been hinted to, just like the Zonai in Breath of the Wild. What does this bring us down to? That a combination of new content and further enhancing and adding new purpose both in terms of gameplay and story is the best way to go when it comes to armor in Breath of the Wild 2. Though there is one last thing, a bonus that could happen. Namely Princess Zelda's potential wardrobe if she is playable. Up to now we have been under the assumption that if Zelda is playable, then her wardrobe should limit itself to a few different armor pieces. But that is selling her short, as Zelda has the by far greatest potential when it comes to new armor inside Breath of the Wild 2. Feminine and unisex. Just imagine the potential of sharing some clothes between Link and Zelda. If that brings more cross-dressing, then that would be welcome and hilarious at the same time. Also to all of you celebrating, happy Pride Month. And on that note, I think we have been able to give you a sense of the scope that we as players should expect from the sequel when it comes to new and existing armor, tunics, clothing in Breath of the Wild 2. What are your ideas for sets of the Wild, new armor for Link, and possibly Zelda? Sound off in the comment section down below. As always, we would greatly appreciate if you haven't already to leave a like, share this video, subscribe to our channel and help us towards 300,000 subscribers for more deep dives inside Breath of the Wild 2, and press that shiny notification bell and again for all notifications to not miss any of our upcoming episodes. We will provide you the content if Nintendo remains silent. Finally, we want to inform you that we will soon be rebooting our Patreon, so stay tuned and instead go and check out one or both of these 2 awesome videos.